Let's call the meeting to order. All right. We have an approval of the board meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstains? Negative. All right. We are at the public discussion. We know we have someone who wanted to come give remarks tonight and isn't here. But I would like to ask if there should be someone come in. Would you like to have a person speak at the end of the meeting, give them the option, or should we just move forward? Formally, we just move forward.
I think we could let them speak at the end if they.
We have an agreement on that?
Yeah.
We'll make an adjustment. Maybe what we'll need is a motion to make an adjustment to the agenda at some point if that should happen. I want to be inclusive of the public, but I also want to respect everyone's time. All right, number 4, items to be discussed. The AFSCME agreement.
So this is a 5-year contract with our staff that's represented by AFSCME Local 183. Just for context, we have a joint contract with the City of Iowa City. It was negotiated with the City of Iowa City, members of AFSCME. Jason and I were on the negotiation team. It covers 5 years, but there's a reopener for the wages in year 3, 4, and 5. And that was put in place because the city is looking at its budget outlook.
I would have been glad to have a notation of what's changed in this contract from the one from 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It would make it easier to read and to concentrate on things that really need to be concentrated on. I mean, so just that's just a suggestion for the next for 4 years hence, I guess. But you know, to have on a document of this length, to have some kind of a guidance is really helpful.
So were the changes limited with the document you sent here, the bulleted points? So she sent us all the bulleted changes.
I'm sorry?
She sent us all the bulleted changes. We received them not on the document, but in a bulleted list in our packet.
Did I get that?
It would have been in one whole packet.
It's on page 5.
Page, sorry?
Page 5.
No, it's this list that starts here.
Yeah, I think the only thing with that, for some of it doesn't have, what it was changing.
Oh, yeah, I did get this.
Yeah, it should be helpful, but.
But the formatting is hard for everyone, rather than on the document.
No, that's, I'm good with the list, but for some of it, just had the question of what it was changing from, or like if there was an increase, what the increase was without referencing the old contract, but it's, a minor extra ease.
So would you need the old contract included and the new contract? Is that what you're suggesting?
I don't think I would necessarily need it to be included. But for anything like the increasing annual carryover limit to 200 hours, there's just no context of what it was increasing from without referencing the old.
Could answer any of those questions. Yeah. For in that case, it's from 192.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it used to be July 1st. And we're moving it to September so that people don't have to burn vacation time during June if they have a vacation planned in July, so they can continue to carry that over.
Okay.
There's increases on vacation accrual rates. They're also receiving an increase of 1 day to 2 days per year for personal leave. New employees are starting with a sick leave bank and a vacation bank. We did not have that in the past. The discretionary use pay is also increasing, and it is changing from longevity pay to called discretionary use, just so that anybody can use it for whatever. But longevity pay is not going to be used anymore because if you're here for a year, you will receive that benefit. It used to be 5 years or over.
Are all of the items that are in this agreement, are they unique to the library, or is it sort of citywide? If you work at Parks and Rec or something, is this similar?
Yeah, it covers almost all city employees except Police and fire have their own union, so they have their own contracts. And then if you notice, there's two contracts here. There's a contract A and a contract B. B is only for transit. And why that's the case is that the state mandates what collective bargaining agreements and what can be negotiated by work group type. So police, fire, and transit are able to negotiate on healthcare and other types of insurance and in other parts of the contract that are not, and that's not provided to other departments within the city. So this library covered by contract A.
So a lot of these terms are negotiated by the city before we receive them. They've already set the terms. And we could reject it. I'm not sure how that would go forward. However, it's already negotiated with the union.
Right.
You know, the reason I'm saying I don't know what would happen is because the staff are still employees of the city.
It has also been ratified by the union.
And passed by the city council, right?
Passed by the city
So,
council.
So it's almost pro forma.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
But in the future, we can include a red line version.
Yeah.
Or whatever equivalent we decide on, depending on ADA accessibility.
Well,
Right.
and I think you've got kind of it covered a little bit in the item on personal leave.
Mhm.
You just said it's been increased from 1 day to 2, or, you know, if you could do that even in the bullets, that would be helpful.
Are we the only organization or aspect of the city that's a separate signature on this beyond the city council?
Yeah, it's because
So the
there's
city
some
council,
access board.
so the city council really does it for the city.
So, I know a lot of topics are excluded from negotiations. Were there any changes to the sections that are excluded from negotiation?
Any changes that were excluded, like that we were no longer able to bargain?
Yeah.
That was in the previous, like about 5 years ago, that contract, those items were excluded in the contract that we're in now that's ending July 30th.
Okay.
Or June 30th, excuse me.
I was curious about, there are sections where the library director is listed separately, so they're saying, you know, the city manager or the library director, depending on where the employee works, but there are others where it only talks about the city manager, like the grievance procedure. Why is that? Is that?
Sometimes grievances can go through the city proper, or the city manager.
Okay, so that's
And-
on purpose.
Yes.
This way, okay.
He can act as a mediator in some cases. But the personnel policy also is in part with the ASME contract, and so we'll follow that in terms of autonomy.
No comments? So we do need to vote to approve if this is go forward. So we need a motion.
So I'll move to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the city of Iowa City and the Iowa City Public Libraries Board of Trustees and ASME to be effective July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2031.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, okay. Let's move on to the next, the administrative and confidential employee pay plans.
And so just like the contract, the pay plans included here are for non-union admin staff or management. And the pay plan mirrors the across the board increases that ASME has.
Just a curious question. How competitive are we in our salaries compared to, say, comparable libraries?
So we did a review of job descriptions and pay wages. We had a consultant come in, and these pay plans actually are they looked at different places throughout the United States, different places throughout the city, and so they said that these were the competitive wages
Okay.
It's based on the consultant's findings.
This is the same thing that where the city council and already approved it, right?
Further discussion? And again, we'll need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed, abstained. Okay, we're moving along here. We're up to policy review for library programming.
So Angie is not here, but Angie is providing the request for the change. So we did an audit of all of our policies, and it's very similar to when we discussed the job description for the library director and made changes to meet state law. We went through all of our policies to ensure that policies follow state law in terms of language. And this was one policy that we thought would need to be changed. And the current language was added in 2021. And the strategic plan calls for us to address barriers to participation for all library services, including programming. We believe it's important to make our programs more accessible. So we're hoping that this meets our value, the changed language meets our values and our goals.
Has the city attorney seen it? That was it. Further discussion? We need a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I read a few of these in the context of complaints that we've received before from patrons, particularly about that Palestinian program that was co-sponsored. And I do think that even unless you read closely, 702.6 and 702.7 almost sound like they contradict, but I reread it 5 times and I think that you can use both of those to answer back to that concern that we had. So just a statement of notice, not necessarily a change or a comment, but there was quite some discussion about exactly these two pieces when that program happened. But I would still make a motion to approve.
Seconded.
For discussion, are we ready to call a vote? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. We are now on to the building study conversation.
Yes.
Many pages.
Many pages. So this is submitted for your review. So strategic facility plan, but we've been calling it the building study. So we had a presentation by the architects in November, if you remember, and they came to our in-service day in December to discuss with staff. And this incorporates some of the discussions that we had at those meetings. Here, their findings, and the thing in the memo I wrote some of the issues that they identified in the plan. Thinking how we serve neighborhoods when we're a growing city. That's many libraries our size in a community our size have branches. We don't. We have major space issues in the children's room. And as our community changes and our needs change, maybe the way that we have the building layout design might not be the best layout for the future. So there's some opportunities. I think it's really important when we're looking at the building study to think about this as concepts and not building plans. I think we have drawings of like a 3rd floor, we have like visuals, and then you start to imagine these are things, nothing has been decided. These are decisions we have to make down the road. But it's just information for us to have to make those decisions.
I appreciate the cost estimates being inserted. I think I appreciate that. And the staff FTE requirements, that was.
Yeah.
some priorities probably might help, there's a lot here.
Mhm.
The first priority is pretty clearly the roof things. And they're very expensive, right? What do they
You mean
call?
the
The
HVAC?
HVAC,
Beg pardon?
the rooftop units?
Yeah.
HVAC, yes.
Yeah. And those are clearly something that need to be attended to as soon as possible, because it may shut down, in which case we're gonna be in a big problem. So, I mean, I'm not saying but it seems to me if we could figure out a way to just prioritize certain things, it would be helpful, because then we wouldn't, I mean, it's kind of awesome to see all the things that are being proposed. They're all pretty good ideas, but we can't do them all, at least at one time. So some kind of way of prioritizing would be helpful, I think.
That is one thing that is been kind of interesting to think about the building long term. So an example is the HVAC units.
Yeah.
Is the architect said it would be wonderful if you decide, let's say we do decide we have to build a third floor. It would be good to replace the HVAC systems at the same time. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's $9 million away.
We're going to be talking about, do we replace the bookmobile? The bookmobile is aging. It's getting on to 10 years. We have to kind of determine what our neighborhood strategy is, because what kind of bookmobile do we need? Do we still need a bookmobile? And all these things are kind of coming at the same time.
Yeah.
And
I think the HVAC system is a maintenance continuing operations. So it comes from one stream of funding. Where this is a big strategy project. So I agree, you're right, we have to prioritize. But I think they're a little bit different too. One is present tense and one's future.
Mhm.
You know, that HVAC system, I agree with you, it's an immediate issue. Well, these are several years to implement.
Yeah.
We can't wait now. Yeah.
I did like how they included that while you stage things, you very often undo and add cost because you have to maintain the interim between a project and another project. And I think that's important. And I'm glad they included that as the cost of the interim that you are then undoing or restructuring again in a short amount of time. That has a lot of value to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're saying in theory, it's great if you can do everything at once, but how will we have the money to do it all?
And I want to add there's just HVAC, so that's the carpeting that we've talked about, that we need to do that, and some of the furniture updating. So those are immediate costs.
Right. Yeah, the rugs are something that we have talked about.
Right.
And they potentially are dangerous, because we can get sued if people trip over them.
I do think though, like the redesign or the rethinking the space on the pathways piece of how you're moving collections fits in really well with the carpeting project.
Yeah.
So that seems like a closer, more attainable goal. Just the rethinking of floor space and layout, again, with the video collection and the audio collection and the way people move through the space. So you kind of have a primary hallway on the first floor. And rethinking that a little bit would fit really well with replacing the carpeting, although that might change your high density carpeting a little bit, projected.
The one thing that I felt, that this is pretty close to what we saw in November and what we saw at the staff meeting in December. But the one thing that I feel has changed a lot in that time is the need for physical nonfiction books, especially how to. Because the internet has become just a cesspool of AI slop, like in the last 6 months. If you search for something, you're going to get a whole bunch of sites that are just basically your search term because they get clicks and all that stuff. And you know, like I'm more and more turning to the library for physical books or how-tos because I don't feel I can trust what's online. And that makes me wonder if we need to rethink the space out that are being proposed. You know, we don't know what's gonna happen with the internet in the next few years, but I'm having those concerns more and more.
That might be a good survey question.
Yeah.
That's also an interesting question in terms of how people see what we do. That it's not stacks, it's reviewed materials.
Yes.
You know, it's someone who's standing behind you to some extent, that we've at least looked at what this is.
Exactly.
There's your marketing approach.
Mhm. Also, are some of those things even available in hard print anymore?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Or will they be also written?
Or
Will they also be written by?
will they be written by AI?
A recent document.
But still, there should
Yeah.
be some review system before they come for authors. Wow.
And you mentioned, the age of the bookmobile. And, we've talked about the HVAC system, you know, kind of being an urgent, need. At some point, the bookmobile question will be one of those urgent things. Has there been any thought to kind of having that neighborhood conversation so that we'd be prepared for the eventuality that the bookmobile?
I hope that we do that through the strategic planning process. So
Okay.
we'll have a assessment for neighborhood services as part of that.
Okay. And what would be the timeline on that?
The strategic plan should be coming together in April, May of 2027.
Okay.
And then that'll help us inform our budget request. Yeah.
And also might be time to think about, they're really recommending neighborhood sites, like locations and not just mobile transit. And that might be also part of that kind of look about that.
I think
Particularly
I think
on
about
the east
staffing.
I do also think about
And the
staffing.
reason we did the bookmobile, people who aren't further, is because it could serve, one of the reasons, as multiple branches. And get us to multiple locations and populations, which we didn't have it. If we were gonna meet the same needs, it might need multiple neighborhood-based centers, or we'd have to staff them. So it's not only the physical aspect, it's the service aspect. So it's,
Absolutely.
I think the plan's wonderful, but it's scary when I think either we stretch our staff and shut down hours here, or we, you know, figure out a new source of revenue. And those are hard trails. The bookmobile was, even though it's a vehicle, an economical way of spreading services.
And yeah, I do wonder with say one of the neighborhood center options or the different automated energy kiosks that are for other libraries that have instituted that. So I wonder, I feel like even just, you know, talking to someone and just being with someone for especially like some like Oak Knoll audience and stuff is a large draw of it, and not necessarily even the being able to pick up the book here. So
Right.
I really wonder
The
about
connection.
about
You lose
that.
the human element, which I think is an important part.
There's
The
also
library,
general costs. I've worked in library systems that had them. Vandalism is a thing. So like there's also
With
unexpected
bookmobiles or
with the satellite, with kiosk stations
Right.
like this. It isn't common, but it is a real cost, and it can be remarkably expensive on top of other building expenses. So it isn't like a necessarily cost free, or you know, like a one-time cost. There's also all of the technical difficulty. This was it was like in a shopping area, like strip mall style. Anyway,
Cause I was thinking
monitored,
that those
etc.
would go well at like Mercer.
I was thinking that too, but also that's exactly what made me think of.
Around.
But that also made me think of the vandalism thing, because Mercer is not without, so.
But it is indoors and it's staffed, right?
That's
Like,
true.
it's not.
And I mean, all technology fails at some point, so it's not without like long-term costs. It probably is cheaper than staff, like a full-time, 4 full-time staff members, obviously. But it's not a one-time cost, much like the bookmobile.
And you don't have,
It's not
you
a
don't have the
one-time
human
cost.
element sitting there.
Yeah, you don't have the
You don't-
human element.
We've
so-
also made mistakes in the past where we tried to do a branch on the south side,
Mhm.
and we perhaps chose the wrong partners. If people did not want to go in the building, so it's an interesting dance. You know, we were looking at maybe safety, and it didn't work out as successful as we wanted, and we had to close it.
I do not remember this. Can you?
We I see you laughing over there. We partnered with the police department
Oh,
and had a combined police department with some library services.
Yeah, they had a satellite police station in the south.
I remember that.
We had, it was a satellite for us also. Staffing, we thought maybe we'd wait to save some money on staffing too, because we could limit the hours and also, you know, figure out what services are most appropriate to offer there, and perhaps do some bridge building with the community and library and police department, but the usage was not what we hoped it would be. I don't know if the staff wants, you've been here since we did the whole thing, but.
Not many hours in the substation.
So what did you,
Yeah, it was a walk-up computer lab, laptops and
Books.
everything. We did have some books. Mostly it was sort of an after school. Weekends hang out, space, and wasn't active police. It was more of a like, you could pop in and use a desk. Sir, or the bathroom. And yeah, we did see community members, but that was before Pepperwood sort of had more, so now with more support.
and it was when internet coverage wasn't as extensive in the community, so it served as an internet access point for people who did not have it in their homes, which is the needs, what has changed.
Quite a bit. We had some regulars. But there is money we won't have. Partners that it's on the 6 feet.
Right,
At that point, it was something.
yeah.
but the idea was it was an area that needed services, particularly after school, but it didn't work out the way we had dreamt. It was low cost for us in many ways because the facility was somewhat set up.
Okay.
But I think maybe libraries and law enforcement are an awkward combination for teens.
I think there'll be a lot of things we'll have to think
Yeah,
about,
right.
considerations that we'll have to take in when we're thinking about serving neighborhoods. And
Right.
we wanted to give you a variety of options that we can run through feasibility and make priorities.
And maybe someone will have an innovative idea here because our community is unique. When a consultant looks at many communities, we kind of know our city.
Can finally get your rooftop terrace, as I mentioned in our news article. And then mismentioned in the news article. It doesn't quite overlook the river, but.
Right, I know.
You know, river's there. Imagine.
You could imagine it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, when you do the survey, the highest request would still be the parking lot. It seems to have been the parking lot.
Yeah.
Parking. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
ever.
That kind of trick is seeing a lot fewer comments about it.
Fantastic.
Really?
Maybe it's just resistance to change. And people.
Is there additional information to this building study that would be helpful? Do you want a presentation?
I guess I wasn't at the November meeting, and a lot of these numbers are meaningless to me. I mean, yes, look, we need more numbers. Some of these, it's just, some of them make sense, the area makes sense, but there's several graphs in here that are just dates with a number next to it. I mean, what
No
are
table?
you counting?
What,
Like, what number are you counting? How many?
Some of those
There's like 450 of these and we expect 450 in the future, but I'm not
so
sure.
how many other people did not come, were not at the November meeting?
I was not that.
That's
I
two,
wasn't
you
on
haven't
that.
seen the consultant.
Like, and was that, yeah, what is this? Like collection services manager, 170 what?
Oh, probably square feet.
Square feet, but staff processing, cataloging, sync, 40 square feet, you know, I mean, maybe it is all feet, but some of these can't possibly be area.
Are you suggesting there be a
So,
presentation again?
I don't know that we need presentation again necessarily, but just maybe a little, if they could add a little line about what the numbers are actually counting on.
Oh, I wasn't looking at tables, I was looking at these more or less unlabeled maps. That are like
Yes, I also was,
different colors and you no information about what they are.
yeah, this says zone 1 of the digital media lab is 420. Maybe it is all feet. I don't know.
I think it's losing it.
Chairs and
Yeah.
table storage is 0.
A lot of comparisons.
Is it all just area? This one is a blank chart that just says 635.
So, yeah, I think
If you guys
that's-
already know that.
If they could just clarify some of that. And maybe like if they want to go to those maps and just like make arrows and point to what that is, what is it that we're supposed to be getting from that map? That would be helpful. Their annotations are pretty good. I mean, they have all these notes, footnotes, so forth, but there's, yeah, some of the maps I noticed too for me were like, what is that, you know?
Most of them were fine, but then there were several pages in a row that says
Yeah.
nothing on them.
Yeah, maybe I
That's
just,
a map.
when I'm
Oh,
looking,
like that's the case, but yeah.
Are there unmet audiences that might be served by another presentation as well as the group here, such as the Friends group or anyone issue, so that we could offer one that would be more open?
Other.
Or is it premature? I'm just thinking, then it wouldn't just be for 2 people, you know, but it would
Right.
be for a greater group. And the Friends, they are public face in some settings, and so I'm wondering if they should have a chance
They
to
would-
understand what we're talking about.
They
People
would-
have to know their roles.
they would
so-
also be instrumental in raising the money for these
Right,
things. So, I mean, it would be nice to have them invested in early on.
Or if they were able to communicate how frequently we use compared to other libraries in the state.
Yeah, some of
The
those.
stats are powerful.
Yeah, like the stuff about the children's programming. I mean, it's not surprising to me as someone that regularly goes to them, but in their children's programming is super used and we need. I mean, that's under the main findings that we need to address the space issues of children's services, but that's.
Have all the city council members have access, or would you think any would attend? Because we're gonna be hitting them up
Right.
as we move forward.
Yeah,
I was actually just gonna say, maybe we can get a couple of counselors here. We can't have more than 2, right? Because then there's a quorum, but if we can get 2 counselors.
They can
to see this
receive but not
thing.
discuss, I thought.
And they what?
I thought they could receive information but not discuss, like they could sit in a public forum.
So wouldn't it be like the
Oh,
educational?
yeah, if it was public,
That's
yeah.
what we made it.
I was saying, if we're gonna do another one and have the friends come and, yeah,
Right, is it public or is it private?
right,
Okay,
exactly.
is it a meeting or is it a public forum? So we'd have to get that clear. Would there be a cost to having them presenting, and would they charge us for this?
Part of the contract.
It's already covered by the contract.
I feel, I'm starting to feel eager to like start presenting this to the community and
Right.
get feedback,
we
so.
need a lot of buy-in for that price tag.
Or will that disrupt the strategic planning discussions and the focus groups? We want to fit it in the right order.
Yeah,
I think it could help to get like the friends to city council to start like sharing the narrative of what we want this to be. And what our
I do think
goals
you're
and
right,
aims are.
that
But
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
just I agree that not getting like too ahead of ourselves and then having the public say, well, we need this and this and
The
this.
promise
and
was a
this.
terrace and.
Yes, yeah. Like you said, there was a
Very-
third floor
I mean-
and now there's no third floor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very
Well,
difficult because I
Because
think,
I mean, the plans are beautiful,
Right.
but if they look at this and think, and like you said at the beginning, this is not a finalized plan.
maybe the presentation on need
Yeah, and the
And-
narrative of what,
instead of a presentation about all of the opportunity
right?
would be like, just, it needs, if it's gonna be
Mhm.
public, it should be kind of a focus group, especially if we're starting, that would be fit right in with a strategic plan. Then you do your strategic plan emphasizing that we have this need of
Right.
growth and we have high participation from our community and then, but I would not show these pictures
I
of,
think the idea by doing
Um,
need is interesting because then we won't have any mistaken thoughts that there are promises made.
yeah, you
We're
could
not
just,
talking solutions.
I mean, you
we're
could
talking,
just
you know,
cut this off at the,
Right.
finding.
Right.
like
No
stop
problem.
at section
and not share, like,
5 or whatever.
The like exciting pictures of what the activity spaces can be like.
Yeah.
Because those are
Or stop at
options,
page
not what we want.
4 or section
or
4.
branches all over the town.
Because it's
Right,
nice
because
that you-
they'll be like, oh, you said there would be a branch in my neighborhood, we're all getting branches, which of course you can't do.
Well, and that's, I mean, that makes me think again of what Parks and Rec did, right, for the new pool that's going in at City Park, where they started out by doing focus groups and asking, like, I was invited to one of them where it was for people with disabilities, where they were asking for like specifically, how do you use the pool? What are your concerns? Things like that. So if we can, I would love to see us do something like that where we're bringing in, okay, well, this is the group of frequent library users. This is the people with disabilities. This is the people who don't come here at all. What are we doing wrong? What can we do to get you to come here? So those, having some of those focus groups and presenting, as options in the focus groups, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Because I thought that was a well done process and I feel like it really got community buy-in.
We just we want to make sure it dovetails with the whole strategic process.
Exactly.
That we watch our timing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you could just stop at section 3, section 4 is near and long-term space needs. I mean, throw a couple statistics in there, but
Oh, yeah, that's when they start showing us. all
that's when they
basic
start
things.
showing pictures of places in big cities like Milwaukee that are not here. Like, oh yeah, I do like that's a really cool layout, these great desks.
So how patient are people willing to be for Ann to come back with a timeline because the strategic committee may not meet right away? It may be a few months, or are people going to be impatient with it? Because the first meeting is in the early fall, late summer. And for them to look at the timelines, can we have patience with this? So that the strategic group can figure out how to dovetail it in. Does that make sense to you? Because if people expect this will happen next month, that's going to perhaps be premature.
we are in an assessment phase right now. So this is one piece of assessing. We're doing observation studies, as I mentioned.
Right, observation is next.
We're working on a survey right now, and figuring out ways that we can do we do a long form survey or do we just have these little mini surveys that people can take? We're trying to, how can we collect data? Who's the best audience for these questions, from things like what hours are we open to, what services are we providing, or how do you use the library? And then we also want to look at focus groups too. And I can look at thank you for bringing up the Parks and Rec process, because one of the things that we find is we throw a focus group, we invite people to come. One person that always comes to the library comes to all of them. And that's the only feedback that we get. And how do we work to invite actual people that we want to hear from who maybe not using the library or using the library in a specific way? And so we're kind of doing this in like these step processes of just taking off one bite and so this first observation studies throughout the rest of the year, people in the building, and then the focus groups and surveys.
So the focus groups and the surveys, as I listened to you talk, Kelsey, about that process that Parks and Rec used, it sounds like it was really more conversational, asking them what they want. That wouldn't include a presentation about our needs.
So it was a combination of those.
Okay.
It was, you tell us what your needs are, and here are these pretty graphics that we've already put together that show some of the options. Do you think this fulfills this need?
I see.
Do you think this doesn't fulfill this need? So it was a combination, like the questions were focused on the kinds of things that the lovely graphic were already ready to present, and they were invitation only. So it wasn't like you're gonna get that one person.
You know what they think.
Yeah, I think that's an important, even like with survey stuff, that it's not it's getting people to answer the survey and people that aren't just already, like we already know what they think. How do we get to some of those underserved areas to find out what they need?
And we've been we have strategic planning processes that we've done 2004 and 2014 that have these lengthy surveys. And so we can pull some of the questions from there and look at how things have changed over decades.
So I kind of would like to see like a timeline that puts sort of the strategic planning process and this process together in one spot so we can see what it looks like.
Right, talk specifics, right?
And I like your point of having guidelines, so it's not completely open-ended of, then, people coming in and having different expectations of what the library can then offer versus, being able to have realistic guidelines and examples of what could be done versus people thinking that it's going to be the Milwaukee Public Library that's going to get transplanted into Iowa City.
When you're doing these observational studies and surveys, are they skewed by doing them over the summer? Is the usage different in the summer because this is such a university town?
Yeah, for the observation study, we did one last week. We're going to do one in July. I believe one in September.
And the students would be back.
And one in November.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have to think about that with the survey. We want to make sure that we have a variety of responses from, the summer is very different than it is in the fall.
Right.
And don't we have a lot of work going on in the summer here? Isn't there, do I misremember that?
It got moved, right, for the carpeting.
That's put up because the funding
The
changed.
carpeting isn't, I mean, that's gonna be closing off whole parts of the,
That'll start in January.
oh, it's
We
now
put off,
January.
because of the funding stream was different.
Okay,
We didn't have to do it quite as quickly.
okay.
The local option sales tax is going to start funding that.
Yeah.
Which we're hoping to have the assessment portion of the strategic plan completed by January, so we won't be asking people, how do you feel about the library now that the second floor is closed?
How do you like it?
Yeah.
All right, anything else that we want to bring up about the study right now? It's a lot of pages. It's a lot of information.
I do like that they keep saying 2004 expansion. Like that's something to keep in the memory of our stakeholders too, because 2004 was a long time. I mean, if you have to stop and think about it, and especially if you're an Iowa City person, the library's always been here for you, and it's always been like the time flies. So you have to keep in mind that it's been 22 years of the same furniture. Like people replace their couches at home faster than that, and they're not even at traffic. So I like that this kind of keeps reminding the public that we're well past the lifespan.
I think the lifespan a lot, and then the numbers of where we compare with some of our peers, and a lot of the ones where we have a single branch and have more circulations or more attendees.
I think comparing to the peers would boost pride too, that we do all this more than cities bigger than us. So
is the one small, like, depending on how that's presented, that can also like, well, say you're fine. You
I
can
know.
manage all of this
You
with
can manage all
what you
this with
have.
what you
And that, yeah, I think for the most part, it's, yeah, a sense of pride, and also especially with the growth that like people in the community have seen, how much some of the construction has been blowing up, and that like we clearly can't sustain this.
Yeah, and I think your report does a good job of like indicating that there has to be changes. I think what we present to the public obviously is in a 100-page report, but there's good information in here.
Um, you mentioned the contract with the merge before and how it's kind of an unusual and maybe, isn't it getting to an end of terms? Or am I I may be misremembering this.
I think in a few, I'm not entirely sure when the exact lease ends, but I've been in conversations with the city manager's office about the space.
That being like a potential
Perhaps an
feasible,
economic way to meet.
an economic way to look at some of these plans. Okay,
Yes.
because it seems also like a natural lifespan of a lease would be an appropriate time.
Mhm.
And it seems like it could align with our planning here. Okay.
Does the library earn money from merge? From the,
Indirectly, they pay rent and that goes into revenue for the city, which goes into the general.
theoretically, some of it comes back, yeah, but they don't give it directly to us.
But we do have costs for it.
Sorry.
We have some responsibility for the facility,
Yes.
so we have cost. For
Yeah,
it.
so
The
we have
library has
maintenance.
costs for it.
Yeah,
Because HVAC.
We don't get the revenue, but we pay,
Interesting.
we're paying for it.
Yeah.
Mm.
The reason I'm just saying this is, some things are direct and some things are indirect. Our costs are direct.
what's the history of that?
The merge space. Well, when the building was built, they included that space as a way to pay off the bond. So this building was bonded. And there was restaurants in that
Yes.
space.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was.
Yeah.
When I was here in
And
undergrad.
it did help
Wedge.
pay off the bond pretty quickly.
uh-huh.
But it was always intended to be part of the library later on, and it's
Here we are, 22
22
years later.
so I can work with the consultant on coming up with some parameters for
Great.
a presentation to invite the friends group as well as members of the council.
Right. I think doing it in the summer may be difficult because people are here, so let's not rush it when people are back. In early fall or whatever fits into the overall strategy.
Okay.
And again, they're probably already sensitive, but I'm just thinking about what Clara said, that we want to make sure that we're not talking about solutions, we're talking about defining need.
Start with one piece of the SWOT analysis, right? Just one piece at a time.
Leave the opportunities on.
It is great to imagine the third floor, but
It was really the idea.
$10
million.
Yeah, right. No, I know. I was like, oh, that is so lovely, but like we should have promised it's happening.
Should we move forward?
Yeah.
We don't need any action on that right now. So, Neighborhood Centers of Johnson County Partnership.
So we've partnered with the neighborhood centers for several decades, offering their libraries at Broadway and Pleasant Ridge. And we are adding the new Arthur Street location as a outreach site. And they are opening on June 11th and they're having an open house, and you are invited to see that at 3 p.m.
It's a very worthwhile organization if you're not familiar with it. The organization that I'm the executive director of is in this neighborhood. And so it's nice to see another entity come in and do some refurbishment. If you've ever seen this building in pictures before, you would recognize that. I mean, it's an old orthodontics, this was all, Town Crest was all medical, when I was a kiddo, my dentist was there. But it's nice to see them come in and do some really worthwhile stuff in that neighborhood. So I think it's great. I'm glad the library is collaborating with them.
And there's senior apartments right across the street where my mother-in-law lives. So it's been fun watching them transform it. And there's been a lot of cross presentations and invitations and with the seniors in the area because it's all walkable.
Right.
Great.
We're also very excited that their parking lot is really going to accommodate the bookmobile really well.
Oh, I love that.
So
That's great.
Good stuff.
Great. Great. All right.
Director's report.
Happy to answer any questions about the
Or HVACs.
system, which is running.
Hey, that's the first step.
Yeah, we are still waiting on our to get bids for or at least to get some quotes for. So we're waiting for the manufacturer still.
7 months is a lot of hot summer and cold winter before you can get anything taken care of, right? Isn't it?
And speaking of 2004, one of the things that our HVAC systems withstood was that they were impacted by the tornado in 2006. They had to be rebuilt in some components. They also were hit by the derecho and had some issues with that. They have withstand quite a bit of weather and have received a lot of repairs. They do not owe us anything except for the summer.
Right. We just need to make it till we can.
Is the city aware
Yes.
that this is accelerated?
Mhm.
And that the cost as an emergency will be much greater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I understand is that if it's an emergency, it's not like the equipment is sitting there waiting to be sent.
No, they have to be specially built.
It has to be built for us.
Yeah.
So the idea of emergency is.
Wasn't there talk of helicopters also?
No matter what.
Yeah, 2 and 5 would need to be brought in by a helicopter. And if we're renting that helicopter, we might as well replace one.
Because it's a programming opportunity.
It really is.
It may require us to shut down the building that day.
Yeah,
I would think so.
that
That's
makes
usage
sense.
issues.
Yes.
Sense. You're not gonna do
Programming from a
touch a
Programming any
copter.
fans in a program.
Touch a copter.
Anybody ever see La Dolce Vita? You remember the statue the statue of Christ that's being floated by a helicopter? It opens the movie, as I recall.
This is gonna coincide with the project then, isn't it? If we're talking about January.
maybe. So if we have to.
You can just do all that at the same time.
I am hoping that especially if there might be a day or two we have to close for carpeting when they're doing the entranceway, maybe that could be the day that the helicopters bring the.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
If things would work out that way.
Right.
Maybe
We should invite
the statue over.
the film school should come.
Yeah. We'll do the little
Invite the film school.
Another thing to follow up on, I just wanted to say that we are working with legal for response to the drug testing question. That we forgot about that. I'm hoping to have an answer for that soon.
Thanks, it's not on this, but have we made any advancements with the NORCOM, with the vending machines, the public health vending machines?
Well, I talked to Johnson County Public Health on that grant.
Maybe we should explain to those.
Yes, so the North Liberty Library and the Coralville Public Library have these harm reduction vending machines. And it was part of a grant program through Johnson County Public Health. Public Health also has one in the public health building and the Deadwood. And we're not part of the original grant process, and that grant has closed, and so we might have to work with alternatives. There's a couple of nonprofits that have been interested in that. I'm waiting on that, so if that's of interest, we can.
Great.
Tell them about that.
We made time on how it's going. I just know the Deadwood. There were problems with the Deadwood placement, and I just wanted to make comments because I was the least need. He's not doing that.
Johnson County Public Health.
Not that you don't have enough to do. Anything else on the director's report? People like to comment on our questions? Okay, we are up to the adult services with Jason.
Pretty fast.
Yeah.
You made it.
AI degree.
You made it over the hill of the migration, it looks like. Congrats to all.
Yeah, fun peak there.
Yes, I bet.
It's a really helpful visual too. I mean, I knew there was a lot of either email, chat, phone calls, but just seeing how drastic really puts it into perspective.
Yeah, I saved you the table because I had the table of the numbers and it's like, let's just. And then I had shared the graph with staff. And then I thought, well, I better check. Someone's gonna ask about the phone, so I did a quick phone check.
Yeah.
And that one was even crazier because of the long tail. It's sort of. I haven't checked since I did the report to see if I'm still seeing this kind of ups and downs day to day, but the volume is just so much higher. And on that week, Amanda had staffed, I think at least we usually have one person on the switchboard every hour. That week of the transit shift, she had at least one backup in her office phone. So we had the phone route here.
Wow.
You have your phone turned on for that phone as well. It calls. It's busy. And so just on the number through here's somebody in the phone. And they're like, what's your library card number? We call usually have that office there. And just lots of ringing. But it stayed pretty steady afterwards, and it's interesting because for a while we've been sort of thinking, how long will we need phone support? Because I've shown you graphs in the past of the steady decline of calls. And, to imagine that if we had gotten rid of switchboard before the changeover, it would have been just disaster. To not have something that has been responsive. It's still a bit of a challenge, walking people through the process remotely, but we've all gotten so much practice that by now it works a lot better. Getting everybody back into the floor, back in. So.
Are you expecting summer reading crazy to impact that at all?
I don't think so. I think it'll be just kind of the same steady, like, there's power users that are like a little bit impacted with them. There's the weekly users that come, and visitors, and these people that are quarterly or just straight digital users that, oh, my card's now expired on the 2-year cycle or the August 1st date cycle. That'll be a big one.
Okay,
That's the turnover date that we use. So, and June 1st is our next week because that's the student dorms. And so we do all dorms at June 1st. So we're starting to see people in Illinois. That's what we're calling to update their accounts, and they're updating the bill in May info. Or having to kind of ask the follow-up question of, are you coming back in October or September? Because we won't change your address then. So because you'll lose all stuff that you're on.
Yeah.
It's fun walking people through the type of.
Yeah.
I thought also the mass email campaign section was really interesting, specifically the click-through rate and what's considered average, strong, and excellent. Do you foresee using that as an option to either inform patrons of different events or just a use of communication going forward?
This one's Sam's report. It's
You're
totally fine, because I was part of the patron point, service that they're using for this, and so, some of the webinars that we took beforehand, so I kind of know a little bit, but, basically, we don't quite know how powerful the software is yet.
Right.
It can do a lot of these campaigns, they call them, and so we anticipate it. And
Yeah.
kind of, I think right now we're sticking with, the subscription, the newsletter subscription that we currently have at the city.
Mhm.
But I think the idea is to eventually
Right.
start porting them over to this. And also potentially to do, or you might know, are we gonna start using patron point? That you know of for overdue notices, such.
That's still a little bit up in the air. It took a long time to kind of get it set up. That was the original intent, was to be a patient point for all the IELTS patient as well, but if this wasn't quite ready to go, the migration, so felt like to just use the same stuff that comes with it. It's taken a while to get that set. I'll be able to set. Switch over.
But it's pretty powerful with
Yeah.
the iOS integration. You can, we have a lot of privacy issues with that, but there can have it. Look at accounts, sort of see what activity looks like and send was based on activity or lack of activity. We haven't seen even a lot, because we know about services or in books.
Right.
It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, we're in that position where we're trying to figure out what's
Mhm.
with those privacy implications. And we typically never send mass emails
Right.
to all of our patron database. We decided to do that just because
Right.
they would lose their services
Yes.
with the password. And so we're trying to figure out, well, when would
Is
we
it
ever send that
appropriate?
out? And when should it be opt-in?
Yeah.
And so we're having those discussions
Yeah.
about this.
That's, yeah, you imagine having kind of like a mass communication, like policy or like laid out of like, yeah, this is exactly why or when we should, or.
Yeah.
Okay.
New policy review.
You know, it's true.
I was thinking the Friends does opt-in mailers too, so they might have some ideas of what's been successful for them too. They're on a different purpose than getting you to return your library books or come to a program, but you might have a little insight on what's been effective since they do have mass mailers. Or at least I get them because I signed up for that.
Anything else on either report that or community access services report, that we've kind of led into that one.
Just a comment, I'm excited about the new play days programming. That seems like that would be a fun. Another way to partner.
And I would also add like advertising this to daycare or camp, kids camp programs. There's a bunch around and I've seen my own students with their camp at the bookmobile at Weatherby or something like that because they're traveling to the splash pad, but also, you know, like advertising some overlap there. There was like a family music story time that like my students were at their day camp and happened to be also at the family folk machine concert at the same time. So advertising to those like summer camp groups might be they're always looking for someplace, you know, some extra diversion.
And thank you to the volunteers for the recognition. So it's great. So great. All right.
Yeah, but 7,000.
Yeah, it's impressive. Natalie shows commitment, but it's a huge savings for us. Where budgets are getting tight. Development report.
Trying to answer any
I
questions.
know we don't have Katie yet, maybe you and the Friends representatives, I don't know. Any questions, any?
You know, I don't know, but in the room was at this presentation, but was the presentation focused on at Oaknall? Was it focused on library services, or was the focus on legislative challenges?
I think it was library services.
Okay. You see what I'm getting at here. So I don't think the general public differentiates between the Board of Trustees and the Friends Foundation. You know, I really don't. We do because we're on this board. But, and so they do a lot of public facing things, right? And so I just, I'm always a little bit prickly when it comes to not getting overly political. And if you were the director of the Friends Foundation, and it sounds a little political, general public thinks, that could be us.
So you're thinking there's a blurring of missions in the public
Sometimes
side?
I think just things I've, that I personally have heard. I'm just, I think that that's important to address. Send the minutes so they can all read it. But I think we have to be careful.
I think that
I think that we do have to be, there has to be, we have a library director, right? And the library director is the head of the library. Right. So I'd like to see your input in some of that conversation, some of those conversations that occurred from that entity.
Did the talking points that the staff person presented at Oaknote get run past you first?
No.
For the political ones?
one of the things I noticed is that there was a deep community interest in the future of the Iowa City Public Library. And to me, the issue that Joseph just raised is going to be really important going forward. Who's speaking for the library? Is it the director and the trustees, or is it the Friends Foundation envisioning what this future might look like? I mean, I think we just have to incorporate that into our plans for communication about a strategic plan and any changes to the facility. I think people can be confused about whether is the Friends Foundation going to do this refurbishing, or is this going to be the library?
Yeah. Can I also ask, when you have presentations like this, is it invitation to the library or is it to the Friends?
I believe Oakville had an invitation to the Friends.
To the Friends specifically, not to the library.
Was the goal to get people to donate to library? Okay.
Donate or participate. Friends and no participating in the Friends. So I just know a lot of people who retire and then enjoy that kind of organization.
But maybe when there's a summary like this, the goal of what it was about and the idea of how is this success judged. I know when I read this, of course, I thought about, well, we're talking about 2 decades of leadership of a staff person.
Right.
I'm not sure if that was the goal of the presentation.
I thought the same thing.
I would also just be curious to know, like, if it was a robust and thoughtful Q&A, like what questions they were asking.
That probably would tell us whether they thought they were talking to the Friends or the library.
Yeah, I would just be
Because those
interested.
questions would tell us where the confusion lies. If they're asking about the direction of the library,
Right.
that would not be appropriate for the Friends.
Right.
It does suggest that Oakville would be a good, as we talked about earlier.
Yes,
Oscar.
but yes.
Focus group.
Yeah, I thought that too. But yes, it would be interesting to know what
What robust.
what questions they were asking. and what questions they're asking about the future of the library too.
I wonder if when they invite the friends, if they know who they're inviting. If they think they're inviting the library. Why the invitation would go to the friends and not the library.
I wonder if that was like a personal
I
connection.
mean, personal connection.
Personal connection.
Right, that's different. It could be
Right,
answered.
it could be just-
a friend invited the
Yeah,
person.
a member of the friend has a connection.
Yeah.
It could be just us.
Right.
But I understand Joseph's remark that it creates blurry responsibilities and potential overstep of mission.
I don't actually have a problem with the Friends Foundation going out and advocating and talking about the various legislation that's going on, because I don't think people know, and they are out there like facing more than we are. But we may want to make sure that there's clear description of the difference between the foundation and the library at the beginning of those presentations.
Within the 501(c)(3) structure, how far can they go with political advocacy?
You can do issue advocacy. You cannot do political. So you can't say, you know, you should vote for Eleanor Levin rather than her opponent or anything like that.
But you cannot legislative
You
act.
can talk about issues. You can say, hey, there is a bill that we oppose because it will make these things harder for the library or for the foundation. Yeah. And maybe they should talk to a lawyer to get some guidance on what they can and can't say.
My other fear is that we want to make sure we never have triangulation.
Then we never what?
I have triangulation. For example, if the library trustees take a stand on one thing, on an issue, and the friends takes a different stand.
We are the trust, we are the
are
foundation. The people sitting at this table are the only members of the foundation, right?
We're the corporate.
Yeah, I mean, so I think if we say as a group that this is not appropriate for your group to raise, they have to adhere to that.
It seems like what I'm hearing is some different interpretations of how far the advocacy should go. Is that correct? That's something we need to maybe work through.
I mean, this is all fuzzy to me. What was said that people are concerned about?
I wasn't there.
Yeah, not sure. That's the.
But I think it's looking at the summary that was written in the report. On the growing statewide advocacy effort supporting. We don't know. That's why I think we had those questions robust and questions, we might have a better idea. Because if they're asking for it to be library mission, library organization, it probably should come from the library, from the director. If it's related to development, maybe it's most appropriate for her to delegate it to the development manager.
I mean, what was I'm still not clear what happened.
We weren't there.
That's the problem.
We don't have Katie
Nobody
here.
was there.
No, we don't have Katie here.
That's why, that's why raising
Members of the friends also bringing it up.
Yeah.
Because the two people who brought up it also sat both sides of this. I think it's an issue we need to at least hear and give some thought to. Because they sit in both groups. And what I'm hearing is there's some ambiguity sometimes about the roles. Is that certain? And they're in both groups. I am not. But then there's ambiguity at times about the roles of the two groups.
Do you want a presentation on the advocacy efforts that the Friends Foundation have done?
Maybe we just need Katie here to clarify or to get more information on the question. What would you like? What would make you feel at ease? Because I think we had a presentation on the structure.
Yeah.
I think you're the most important because you're the one sitting in both rooms.
And how do we know about what happened at Hoopno?
Just from.
Just from the report, only from what we have right here.
Yes,
what we're
that's
saying,
it.
because we don't have.
That's the extent of it.
Right, but I don't think it's just about Oakland, if I'm understanding correctly, it's more of a general idea.
Yeah, sure. That's,
Yeah.
But this just may have been the catalyst for this conversation.
yeah.
Correct. Right.
And, I'm not suggesting that our director get into micromanagement, but it might have been a clearer description here if we had known that someone from Oak Knoll contacted Katie at the Friends Foundation. If Katie had then contacted Anne to say, here's what I've been asked to do, here's what they want, here's what I plan to say. Are you okay with that?
And maybe that occurred. Did that occur?
I knew that she was doing a presentation at Oakville.
Okay. It just seems that wherever we can put in a process in place to clarify who's doing what.
I'm sure the public has no notion, most people in the public have no notion of the distinction between the board and the foundation.
Right, and that is what he's mentioning. That's why he brought this up.
But we are the only constituent members of the foundation. So whatever the board says is what goes. I mean, if we say we don't want anybody on the foundation to publicly speak on behalf of the library, I think that would make people very unhappy, but.
And we also
have the
respect
right to
they're a
say that.
valued partner. I mean, they allow us to keep operating too. So I want to respect what they do also. So I do hear what you're saying. We do have control, but they're also important partners for us. They finance a lot of our work. So
would getting the Cliff's Notes version of the note of Katie's speech be helpful?
I mean, I'm going to imagine that what Katie said at that meeting was to join the advocacy email newsletter that the Friends Foundation sends out, which is something that Katie does say to a variety of groups. I do not know explicitly what she said at this presentation. And I did not see the presentation beforehand. Most of my managers do go out and give presentations without my complete slide by slide or statement by statement. I trust them to do that. But if there is concerns, I'm happy about that advocacy email, which is I'm going to imagine what Katie talked about. We can talk about that specific thing.
So it could be the issue is the wording of the report.
Could be.
But I just want to tell you why this is important to me. This is one board member. There are libraries in the state and in the country where the Friends group and the trustees have been in conflict. And it bleeds into the public. Has not been here, but I think if you're proactive and you have a clear understanding of roles, it helps avoid some of those conflicts.
And then too, there's a bit of the when there's kind of confusion on where the board and the Friends Foundation split the room for bad optics, like that, like, oh yeah, the library's not doing this, but like have this other kind of shadow group doing it, and it's not their intention, but I think when there is confusion about two groups and what the purpose is for both, it's easy to see where the interpretation could be negative. So I think just the clarity all around could be good.
I can talk to
and I don't want to step in your toes because you brought the topic up. I want to make sure you have a chance to say why you brought the topic up.
I mean, I think that I've been on the foundation board, obviously, but just different things through the years that I've been on the board. There's been some public presentations I've been to, where it sounds like, oh, wait a minute, the board of trustees don't believe that. This is coming from this Friends Foundation. This is not the board of trustees. other conversations have taken place where specific political parties have been brought out. And I didn't like that.
So some kind of political advocacy is,
It's fine if they want, again, I love the group. I think they do wonderful things for the library. That's not the issue. It's just, yeah, I think that it's fine to advocate for what, if there's library legislation in Des Moines and it's going to negatively impact our specific library, absolutely talk about it, bring it up. So in the public's mind. But then you can kind of stop. You don't have to embellish like this specific senator, right? This specific political party. That's where I think the red line is.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, we do, in this context, because they're representing the institution. The institution does not have a politics.
Right.
And so how do we, I think we need probably just to enforce that with the foundation, that we really don't want advocacy of that partisan advocacy.
I completely agree. I have not seen that happen in a public meeting, nor have I seen it in any of the emails. The email advocacy is centered on specific bills.
Right.
And so if there are examples, that would be good for me to know specifically so I can address it at that point.
Yeah. Was this all initiated by a phone call from somebody at Oaknall who was present at the meeting?
No, this is only related to, I'm sorry.
Well, it was Joseph brought up in response to this.
Contacted you about this presentation?
Not a specific one, but I have been contacted. You could better believe it. Yeah.
Okay, from the way that you brought it up at the beginning, I thought someone had contacted you.
No. What the reason why I brought this up was, when I was reading this narrative in the packet, it said, when I saw legislative, whatever the wording is, I thought,
It's a legislative challenge.
all right, I'm like, I wonder what that is. I wonder what that was.
I wonder if this is something we can just discuss it with Katie when she comes in, just to make sure we have a shared understanding.
I think that's probably the way to go here.
The start point. But I do want to respect that you put a lot of time into the event, and if you've heard this, and if there are members of the public that have brought concerns, we need to give up our time. We need to look at the issue. But also, this is an employee who has a supervisor, and I want to make sure also that we are consistent with how she's supervising her employee. So, is there anything else we want to say? Okay, so just to summarize that, I think we want to look at whether there's any confusion about mission and advocacy and whether we want to just address it at a management sort of level. Okay. I'm going with my question. Good conversation. Community access services development report. Okay, we're down to the president's report. Unless there's anything else someone wants to say about what we're doing here. Okay, I don't have a lot to report. We have the strategic planning committee coming. And then I have had some brief discussions about what the schedule of that would look like and how it would work out. At our previous meeting, we talked about having 2 board members on that, or 2 trustees on that. I have asked Katie Prisky to consider joining that because it's a long-term commitment. And because of her commitment to the children's services, and because so many of you are serving on other committees. Even though some reports, some months we say there's not a report, like from advocacy, we know what's coming. So, just understand. And again, what it is, it'll be reporting back to the board. And I also would like to be on that committee because I've gone through the strategic planning, a few different planning sessions. And so it brings someone who's had longer history with it, and I will no longer be chair during this committee. As someone who's new to the board and a mentorship sort of structure, say move forward. Again, those representatives don't have any power other than to participate in those conversations and to bring the information back to the board. So, just based on previous history, it starts slowly and then it starts rolling into a lot of meetings during the middle of the daytime. And I know we also try to be respectful of everyone's schedule, who's available. And that's all I have from President's report. Foundation updates. Anything? Are we advocacy updates?
All of the bills that were proposed that were going to have negative effects on the public library did not go through, so.
And the Historical Society?
The Historical Society, I don't think either of the bills on the Historical Society went through. I know the one getting rid of the Iowa City location did not. There was another one that reinforced the existing language that requires an Iowa City location. I don't think that went through. So the law did not change.
So what does that mean?
That means the law still says there's a Des Moines location and an Iowa City location.
So the building is just standing there locked?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And nothing's being removed from it?
The last status was the injunction, is that right?
Yes, they're waiting on a lawsuit.
Waiting on a lawsuit.
Yeah.
They do have some building damage. The roof was
It's always
damaged during that, it caught on fire during the 4th of July. And they repaired it, and they didn't repair it in a way in which, when we got those torrential rains in April, no collections have been damaged, I heard, but the facility is.
It doesn't stop moving.
So there's still materials there then? They
There
haven't
are.
shipped it all somewhere else?
Yeah, some have been removed. I know that the newspapers are going to Cedar Rapids, some of them for storage up there, with Advantage Archives, and they've moved some to Des Moines, but the majority of the items are still there. Just not accessible.
Yeah.
Accessible but stable. Environmentally stable. Sounds like they're gonna, time is on their side, don't worry, because things would deteriorate. Okay, so we wait to hear the lawsuit update. Anything else? I think so. News articles. Boy, do we have news articles.
Yes.
We have been gifted with a lot of coverage.
Still a good New York Times correspondent.
Yeah, there is actually.
There's a couple Iowa Press, I forget the times.
There were some that were sort of correlated to the writing program,
Ah.
that are somewhat still correlated.
Okay, that explains. why we can't-
Yeah, I know.
New York Times.
Yeah,
And maybe Sam.
and
Yeah,
Sam too.
Sam really was the catalyst for this article. They called Sam as the president to ask
That
what's
makes
going,
sense.
because the reporter is actually from New York City and called Sam about what's going on with Baker and Taylor. And Sam said, I'm not the person to ask, and whatever it should be.
Gotcha.
Which might be the
And the rest
benefit of having staff take on those roles.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good one.
Visible.
we definitely took advantage of it.
Yeah.
With respect.
Any other comment on the articles? All right, do we have, we have to approve the consent agenda? Do we have approval of the minutes? Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And of the disbursements? You need a motion to approve? Questions?
We can make a motion.
Motion, second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
The agenda for next month.
Well, you become a Friends Foundation corporate meeting. at the beginning of the meeting, and that usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. That will go through their slate of officers and any additional Friends Foundation members. So that's a closed meeting. And then we have the regular meeting afterwards, which will include the non-operating budget for FY27, naming and recognition policy, internet use policy, and then you'll be appointing the committee for the director's evaluation.
Will we receive information in advance for the Friends corporate meeting?
I can ask.
Just in case, I mean, they're appointing people, just so we know what it is before we go in. I believe they've done that in the
I
past.
think, I'll double check.
Anything else that people want to put into June? The summer, June?
It's a ways off, but the director's evaluation, is that open or closed at this point? I've lost track.
I think it can be closed.
Okay, it can be closed now. I've lost track of that bill, that legislation. Thank you.
Is that based on your anniversary date?
It is.
Because we used to do this in November.
So it's slated for September, which is when I was hired officially. And it's now been a year since interim.
Wow.
Plus.
And she stays still here. Despite the HVAC units.
Yes.
Study rooms.
Big motion to close, to adjourn. All right, second. All those in favor? Aye. We'll see everyone in a month.